Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics Club preview. We are on to the fourth club in the series. Obviously, new week. So we had 3 episodes last week, Adelaide, Brisbane, and Carlton. So if you haven't checked out any of those 3 episodes, make sure you go back and check those 3 out. But I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And just like the last episode in Carlton, we've got the same 2 co-hosts and Fantasy Fanatics. We've got Taezer and Tom jumping on once again. Taezer, mate. How are you? I would say how was New Year's break and your Christmas break. We've already said that. So, but how are you going?
Yeah, going well, mate. Solo parenting is good fun. So while the wife's away, so yeah, just enjoying a bit of time with the boys and ready to talk some fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. No, good to chat to you once again. Chatting about another club and Tom back on once again. Tom, mate, how are you since the last time we spoke, which was only about 15 minutes ago, but for people it was a couple of days.
Yeah, they rolled the heavy guns out for these really fantasy relevant sides. So let's see how much me and Taser can waffle about Collingwood this time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that Carlton actually took up about the same amount of time as the Crows, which I probably put it down to. I've probably got to shout out MJ, Rowan, and Jordox and myself for keeping the Crows chat to as little as what we did because Carlton would pretty much chat about the same time. So that's pretty good. But we'll see how long we'll chat about Collingwood for. Another team with an early bye in round 2, which is very frustrating, but they're probably not a huge amount, a little bit like Carlton, but I think even less so with Collingwood. Not as many fantasy relevant options here, but the ins and outs for Collingwood. So a few ins for them. No sort of real ins in the trade period besides Jack Buller. But then they brought in Angus Anderson, Zach McCarthy, Tyne Prindable, Jai Cezina. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I'm sure if Liam's listening, he'll correct me if I did get it wrong. And then Sam Swadlink, who could be an interesting rookie, which we will chat about. And then the outs, a couple of retirements, a couple of delistings, a few guys moving on. Mason Cox, Charlie Dean, Will Hoskin Elliott, Ash Johnson, Finn McRae, obviously your mighty Eagles. Tom, I'm sure we'll be chatting about him later on the series. Oleg Markov, Brody Myercheck, obviously over to Melbourne, and Tom Mitchell, the pig, retiring there as well. I guess won't probably chat about too much the ins or outs. We'll probably chat go into when we chat about the relevant players. But team points for were 10th last year, so right behind Carlton with 1,512.1 points per game. Tom, do you just sort of see Collingwood as pretty much about the same as you did last year? Just they'll probably do what they did?
Yeah, I mean, day cost kicking it to day cost and back to day cost and to day cost will always keep that figure from being too low. I kind of see it being same to start the year. Interested to see how they go and whether things start to change as the year goes on if the Pies don't get off to a good start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, something to be watched for sure. Midfield mix, Taezer, and kick-ins. I think there's one player for me that I think ties into both and could change both slightly, and we'll chat about him a bit in the most relevant players section. But I think Josh Dacos is the big moving piece that probably changes it there. So I think midfield mix, we know it's Nick Dacos in there. We know it's going to be guys like Scott Pendlebury and Ned Long, and they'll probably chuck Steele Sidebottom in there for a bit. Bo McCreary got some CBAs as well, and he'll probably be thrown there again. But I think Josh Dacos, with a full preseason, will move into the midfield. Obviously, we'll see in the preseason. But is that for you the big sort of moving piece that if he moves in the midfield, maybe that means a guy like Houston takes more kick-ins, or if he's in defence, then they'll probably just keep Josh Dacos taking it. Is that sort of the big moving piece, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Degoe is probably another key piece there because it has the flow-on effect to the other guys. When Degoe in 2024, when Degoe was there, he was like a 70-odd% CBA midfielder. So if he's back and fit, he could take up one of those spots. And then there's not a lot of place actually for Josh Dacos in there. But if Josh Dacos is going to command the ball wherever he goes. So if he's in the midfield, it frees up a bunch of that defensive ball for Houston. And if he's in the midfield, it's not going to make a lot of space for Degoe, Pendlebury, Ned Long, or anyone like that to stay relevant.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes, right? Because obviously we're just fantasy coaches, right? We watch all the games and we sort of give our opinions, but we're not the coach. But I'm just looking at it going, the game with the between the arcs, sort of its last touch rule. I think the game's going to be condensed a bit more into the corridor and not as much on the wing, so I won't want it going out as much. I think that's going to favour those transition players a bit more. I think Josh Dacos is that guy that can, obviously got the speed and that, along with his brother, that can go through that midfield. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to move him there, considering Collingwood have got a lot of those ball users already with Jeremy Howe and Dan Houston, obviously we'll talk about. They got Braden Maynard, they got Isaac Quain, and they got all these guys that I think can lift that load even with Josh into the midfield. And we saw his what he can do in the midfield in that game against the Gold Coast, which I still remember vividly, was an absolute amazing quarter to watch as a Josh Dacos owner. Fixture, Tom, we chatted about this before the pod. It is incredibly difficult, particularly to start the season. So do you want to, I guess, run through the fixtures to start the year? Because if people haven't looked at this yet, the fact that Collingwood got an early bye and these fixtures makes it really, really hard to start anyone from Collingwood.
Yeah, so they start with St Kilda in round 0, so I think it's going to be really hard, especially if a certain second place in the Brownlow medal, Nick Dacos, has an absolute stormer of a game if he doesn't get a Windhager tag.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Caveat. But generally an easier game in St Kilda, followed by this run of fixtures. Adelaide, Adelaide, then the bye, then GWS, then Brisbane. That's about as hard as the first 4 weeks as physically possible.
It's the flip side
After
of Port Adelaide. Literally flip side.
Yeah. After that, it does get a little bit easy for a few weeks, and then they go back into a difficult run before they approach the mid-season byes. I'd like to pose a question to the pair of you. I think it's a pretty safe fact that all of us at some point will want Nick Dacos in your team. I think that run rules him out as a starting pick. What do you guys have a rough early plan to get him in after this? With regard, maybe some players who are on an early bye that you might start and then switch to Dacos, maybe. Have any of you had a thought around Nick?
Well, Taezer, you can go first because we were going to move into most wrong players, and Dacos was the first one we're going to just chat about. So, and you did mention this. So,
segue.
Where do you? Yeah, segue. Nice done, mate.
Brilliant segue. Look, I think probably that Freo game. So in gather round, I think it's round 5. Is going to be. That's going to be a good time to jump on if that's what makes most sense with his price. Now, he might get a little bit cheaper a week later, but Dacos is that kind of guy who can have a break even of 140, and then he plays Freo, who decide not to tag him, and he could go 162, like I believe he went last year. So, it's definitely one you want to have a look and see, okay, if he's got 2-3 games where you don't think he's going to get tagged, consider jumping on. You don't have to have him as as a price at 90 to be value. I think if he's anywhere priced under 100 or around 100, then he's probably worth getting. You don't have to hit the bottom.
Oh, well, I'll take you back to last year, right? Because this exact same thing happened last year. So played Carlton, scored a 76, went into gather round, and we're like, nah, we're not touching him. We want to get cheaper, right? Played against Sydney. And anyone that went to that gather round game knows how well he did. 136. And a few people jumped on, but a lot of us didn't. And then we all jumped on the following week.
And he got tagged.
Yeah. And then a few people didn't jump on the following week because he had Brisbane, and he went 131. So I think the point you're making, Taezer, is that the fixture doesn't really matter with Nick Dacos, whether it's hard or easy opponents. It really comes down to that attention that he's going to get. And I guess that I think round sort of gather round this year is probably the big probably window to get him. I think the other one is round 11 when you get right for his bye, because round 14 bye, not many players on that bye we're probably going to have. He goes Sydney in round 10, so I think he's got Geelong as well at round 9, couple of tags I think with Mullen and Jordan. Then round 11 goes West Coast, and then he's got a few easy games at Lean. So he's got Dogs. Then he goes into Melbourne, and then he's got his bye. So I think gather round 11 are probably the 2 windows that we'd be looking at early. But without shadow of a doubt, we will be owning Nick Dacos at some point. Tom, were you going to add something there?
Yeah, my one worry about Freo is you looked at the glass half full Freo performance last year, where Dacos got 162. I remember going to Optus to watch the Freo Collingwood game at Optus, and he got absolutely followed around by Corey Wagner to a 67. So it was a 95-point difference between his 2 games against Freo last year. So whichever side of the bed Longmuir gets up at, because who knows which side, no one knows. I don't even think he knows. Depend with that game. So I'm more of kind of maybe my January plan is maybe wait a little bit longer, just at the fact that last year he developed a flaw, which we maybe didn't see the previous year, that he got held below kind of that 80 score a few times by a few different teams, that maybe he's not as fallible as he was the previous year, which felt like he didn't have such a great flaw. Low floor.
Yeah.
Bad floor.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. He's obviously one of the most relevant players we've got, and there'll be certainly a few openings where we'll want him in our team. But without so that, we'll want him at some point, but not to start, not with that bad run, essentially full price and early buy makes it a non-starter for us. Josh Dacos, obviously we mentioned. I think if he goes into that midfield again, this isn't a starting pick just because he's expensive. There are other players that don't have a early buy round into the fixtures as well. Like if I'm looking at it, starting Josh Dacos or Connor Rozee, starting Connor Rozee. He's a tiny bit more expensive, but better fixtures, no early buy, that sort of stuff, right? But if he's in that midfield, I think he can average triple figures, and that would put him in and amongst the top 6 defenders, which I think would mean that he's going to be relevant at some point. But roll will be a good thing to watch, sort of going into the season and seeing what that looks like. But Dan Houston, Taezer, is the one that's a value that could potentially be a starting pick if he was to pop in opening round. I think Tom mentioned those fixtures, right? And you were mentioning them; they're like the hardest fixtures for defenders. I think Crows, Giants, and Brisbane were the 3 hardest, or 3 of the 4, or something like that. But he's got a good fixture round 1. If he pops a 120, it's going to be an interesting starting pick because he's obviously probably over 20 points, potentially underpriced based on what he did at Port.
Yeah, look, I could be overthinking this and, trying to be the smartest guy in the room, but I reckon Houston could have a real fool's gold story about him because he's going to play St Kilda, who give up a lot of points to defenders in that opening round. So I think there's a really good chance he does pop a good score, but then he's going to hit those tough fixtures. And yeah, I could really see that he eventually being okay because the role probably needs to be there. I think for Collingwood, if they're going to do a bit of a season review, they're going to look at the amount of capital they spent on getting Dan Houston to the club. Play as this non-distributing halfback who kind of manned up, sometimes kicked the ball, sometimes went into the wing, just didn't do anything. And part of it is because they gave the keys to Josh Dacos. And like, if they're not going to use Dan Houston at what he's good at, then it's kind of a misallocation of riches. So I think he could have a good season, but I want to see that role. Like I want to see him taking 60, 70% kick-ins in that first round, and then that'll pique my interest. But with that early buy and tough draw, I would still probably want to watch it for a little while. And if he does it against a good team, then that would be a good sign for me. I'd rather jump on in round 3 or 4 once he's done it, scored a 95 against GWS.
Yeah. I think I agree as well. I think he's definitely someone we've got to put in our watch list and black book. But yeah, those tough fixtures, is tricky, particularly when we're going to mention it a few times probably until we get up to Port Adelaide and even after. But Port's like fixtures, right? You're looking at someone like a Miles Bergman. If he's playing that midfield role, similar price, he's got the early fixtures, no early buy. You're probably going to go to the Bergman side of things, even a McKercher type there. But Houston definitely a name that to keep an eye on because if he can improve, he's potentially over 20, 25 points underpriced. Darcy Cameron, Tom, is a ruck that I think probably doesn't get as much love just because he's not the sort of top like a Gorn, Cherry, English, Grundy type ruck, but or Marshall, but he's not sort of like the guys that average below. He's solid, averages anywhere from 95 to low hundreds. I think he went over 100 last year, had a good year, but probably one of the only teams where I think he's probably just going to be the solo ruck and then the clear number one ruck there. The early buy obviously makes it tricky, but is there sort of any interest potentially in Classic just with the rucks, the question marks with the rule? Any interest from you maybe staying Classic? I think Draft is a good pickup, but Classic, any interest?
There is some interest from me, and it's kind of just if I decide that I just want to not spend more in the ruck than that. It could just be I don't want to spend 105, 110, 115 in the ruck. I'm just gonna pay 100, 102, I think he's priced at. I think he's going to be about that again this year. He's the only senior ruck on the list. So there's no Mason Cox chop out. There might be a young ruck who gets a gig as the fifth player on the bench as a chop out, or the Jack Buller or Stabley the chop out. Either one, it's still not going to be big time. It's going to be a lot of tog for Cameron. The round 2 buy is annoying, but he's a best 18 round. You probably can suck it up for a week, especially if it's a nice score round 0 against the double threat at St Kilda. So I'm not uninterested, but I don't see much value. I just see him as that 100 guy, a good placeholder till you work out what's going on in the ruck and move to the flavour of the month.
Yeah. I think if he didn't have the opening round, I'd be a lot more interested. And I think if Sam Draper had a different buy and we were to start him in our forward lines, I'd be a bit more interested. But they got the same buy, which makes it true you can't have been covering with him. So it'd be like a Duff Titler if you're covering with Darcy Karen. I think there's probably a couple other rucks that don't have early buys that I'd be probably looking at potentially staying. But yeah, Draft I think is good pick, very good pickup. You know what you're going to get pretty much there. So yeah, very good pick. And there's a couple of rookies that just keep an eye on. Sam Swadling, who has had some good numbers at state level and juniors, so could be someone to keep an eye on. And Harry DeMattia has been someone that's been on this for a couple of years and heard good things. Just a few injuries have sort of kept him from really pushing for a debut, but if there's a full preseason, do they blood a couple of these younger guys, knowing that there's a few of the older guys calling out to start, getting a few of these younger guys in? So just a couple of names to keep on your watch list in the preseason to have a look at. And pretty much to finish up, Taezer is someone that we've had in our teams a few times, and he's now back to being in our forward lines. But Jordan De Goey, priced at 77, so not priced at his mid-50s average that he had last year, which is obviously a shame because I think if he's probably in the mid-50s, there'd be a lot more of a discussion. But I think price at 77 makes it really tricky. So is it, and with the early buy, tough fixtures, is he just a draft slider for you, or any interest in Classic maybe after the buy, maybe as an upgrade target if he goes well?
Yeah, not starting, just unfortunately those fixtures that buy. But De Goey, when he was fit and in form, is a guy who they've given the keys to be like a high. I think he was actually the highest CBA midfielder at one point a couple of seasons ago. So like they like him in that role if his body can handle it. So I mean, if he's just like strip everything else away, if he's playing 75% midfield as a forward, then it almost, he's in a shout to actually be one of the top averaging forwards. But I think he's one you wait, you see if he's fit, you wait for a good run of games. Maybe he gets injured, drops a few points, and then you pick him up as someone priced at 80 who can go 85, 90 when you're rounding out your team, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with that one as well. But yeah, I think Collingwood just in general, just not as much relevance, at least to begin the year with those tough fixtures. But as we said, we're all Nick Dagos at some point. If Josh Dagos is playing midfield, we're probably all likely to own him in our defences as well. And Houston, maybe, if he goes well, could be an upgrade target there as well. And Dusty Cameron, a pretty good pick up maybe in draft and could be someone to look at in Classic. But I think that pretty much wraps up all of the Collingwood discussion. So, Tom, Taezer, thanks for jumping on once again. Tom, where can the people find you across the socials?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Tom_Hales_.
Beautiful. And go and give Tom a follow. And Taezer, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Taezer87. And looking forward to a big season.
Yeah, look forward to having both you boys on the Fanatics, as he said, for the 2026 season. And you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials and us at AFL Fantasy Fans on X. If you did enjoy it, make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Plenty more content coming throughout the pre-season and into the season. But obviously, because it is the 12th of January, our first live show is going to be this Sunday night on the 18th. So whether the game has launched by the time we record that, because it'll be mid-January, we're recording this. What was it the date today? It's Thursday, the 8th of Thursday, 6th of January. Sorry. So game might be open by then, might not be. We'll be doing our first live show because we'll give our first thoughts, and we'll go into position previews, rookie episode, and then we'll go into all the games because boys, we're just over a month, about probably 5-6 weeks away from getting some pracky games in, and everything. So it's coming thick and fast, and got plenty of content coming your way. So we'll hopefully catch you guys on the other previews. We've got, I believe, we have Essendon coming up on Wednesday, but the order could be shuffled depending on guests and when we can get them on for episodes. So at this stage, Essendon will be the next episode, hopefully with a special guest or two jumping on that one. So we'll catch you guys then, and we'll see you guys in a couple of days. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah.